for Legislative District 25, House Position 2. I'm Lydia Zepeda, and this is Ruth Ogden, and we're co-moderators for this forum. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County and our community sponsors, we welcome the candidates and audience to this Community Candidate Forum.
The League of Women Voters Tacoma-Pierce County acknowledges that we gather on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish peoples, surrounded by their traditional waters in the shadow of Mount Tahoma. We actively seek inclusive and respectful partnerships that honor Indigenous cultures, histories, identities, and current realities.
The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization whose mission for the past 102 years has been to empower informed and active participation of citizens in government. Candidate forums are one of the many ways that we do this. Anyone 16 years or older can be a member of the League of Women Voters. For more information on membership, go to our website, lwvtpc.org. That's lwvtpc.org.
The candidates in ballot order for Legislative District 25, House Position 2 are Cindy Jacobson, Cameron Severance. The general election is November 8th. If you are not yet registered or have moved, you may register or change your address online at votewa.gov by Monday, October 31st. That's votewa.gov. If you are already a registered voter and your address is correct, your ballot will be mailed out on October 21st. Your ballot must be postmarked or placed in a ballot drop box by 8 p.m. Tuesday, November 8th. This forum is being recorded and will be posted at the League of Women Voters Tacoma-Pierce County website, lwvtpc.org. Questions have been prepared by members of the League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County and our co-sponsoring organizations. We invite live audience questions via text to 253-906-4734. That is 253-906-4734. Questions must be directed to all candidates and may be reworded or consolidated.
Our timekeeper today is Susan Eidenschenk of the League of Women Voters Tacoma-Pierce County. She will hold up cards to let the candidates know when they have 60 seconds remaining, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and when it's time to stop. When you see the stop card, you may finish a short sentence. Please stay on gallery view so that you can see us and the timekeeper, Susan Eidenschenk. Please do not talk unless it's your turn. Please mute yourself when it's not your turn to speak. The audience is on mute and cannot use the chat function. A reminder that civility is expected. I ask each of you to confirm that you agree to our ground rules, which, among other things, include addressing the issues and not making personal attacks or comments. Please confirm by giving me your thumbs up. Thank you both candidates. We appreciate that.
Each candidate has up to 2 minutes for an opening statement. After that, the order of questions will rotate, and each candidate will be asked the same question. At the end, each candidate can make a 1-minute closing statement. The order of the 2-minute statements for Legislative District 25, House Position 2, is ballot order. Cindy Jacobson, go ahead.
Hi, I am Cindy Jacobson. I am privileged to be the current state representative in District 25, Position 2, for the last 2 years, and I served 4 years on the City Council, Puyallup City Council prior to that. And my husband and I have been in Puyallup for 35 years. We've raised our 7 kids there on a shoestring, just one income. And I worked off and on up until I took a job as a community college math teacher for the last 10 years before I got into politics. And we have, did I say 11 grandkids? So the reason that I'm not retiring and taking up gardening is because we have work to do. We have work to do because in 2021, the majority party, which has been in the majority for nearly 40 years, passed police pursuit laws, for instance, which hold our officers to a standard of probable cause instead of reasonable suspicion. And the Puyallup Police, for instance, have said that they've had more people running away from the law under those laws in this last year than they have in the last 5 years. And other issues are sensible climate change policy that really gets at the issue in a cost beneficial way, and affordability. We've got programs that we put in place like the CARES Act that was very unpopular that are already insolvent, and we even kicked that down the road till next summer. So the balance, I'm the balance, I'm the moderate voice, I'm the reasonable voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy Jacobson. Cameron Severns.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cameron Severns. I'm a common sense Democrat. I'm a local insurance and financial advisor, a real estate entrepreneur, a church leader, and a nonprofit treasurer. I'm an encourager, a uniter, a problem solver. My greatest asset is that I love people. I got on the ballot by running a secret word of mouth writing campaign. When I saw that no one was running, I started knocking on doors. My friends, Republicans, independents, Democrats, knocked on over 1,000 doors in about 2 weeks, and we got more than enough votes to be on the general election ballot. I believe in safe communities, supporting law enforcement. I believe we should be laser focused on addressing the underlying issues that cause crime. I believe that Wall Street hedge funds have no place in our housing market. I believe that we need common sense solutions to end the homelessness crisis. I believe that women have a right to make their own healthcare decisions. I believe in the union way of life. I believe that working people will show up for working people. I think that working class rhetoric should be backed up by true working class and common sense values. I'm part of the exhausted majority, the folks who are sick and tired of the petty partisan fighting. We want common sense representatives who will stand alone for our people and act as trusted servants who care about the issues that everyday folks face. I grew up in a house with my mother as a Republican, my father as a Democrat, and it taught me how to engage in healthy political discourse. I think we have a lot more in common than we think.
Thank you, Cameron Severns. Your time is up. Thank you to both.
Now we come to the questions. Each candidate gets up to 90 seconds to answer each question. For some questions, we may indicate that you only have 60 seconds. Again, live audience questions can be texted to 253-906-4734. That's 253-906-4734. The candidate order will rotate for each question, so that for question number 1, we'll start with Cameron Severns. The first question is, if elected, what are your budget priorities and how would you pay for them? Cameron Severns, please.
Number one budget priority for me is getting affordable housing right away. We have a homelessness crisis that is completely out of control. And I believe that we should use our common sense and follow up on what other cities have done to end their homelessness crisis in the cities that they've experienced it in. Houston, Texas, for example, took 25,000 people off the streets in 5 years. And it's pretty simple. They went to a housing first policy, no means testing, no barriers, just get people into housing. After that, they provided them all the services that they could need. And then they gave them 1 year of rent. And they said, you're going to stand on your own 2 feet. I believe in that. People in this community have helped me out a lot. I've been down and out. I've been the guy with job losses and evictions, but people help me stand on my own 2 feet. So I think if we go to a housing first policy and invest in housing first, I believe that we can end the homelessness crisis here in Washington State. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly Chambers, please.
Yeah, Cindy Jacobson. My seatmate Kelly. My big budget priorities are that we are fiscally responsible. It's interesting that Mr. Severns would talk about homelessness and housing, because one of the laws that was passed by the majority party was the Clean Buildings Act, which is going to make apartments much more expensive. And Mr. Severns himself is advocating for some form of rent control, which again, when you control prices, it makes shortages. So I think we need to address homelessness. I have a lot of compassion for that, but I think we need to watch how we do it, because Seattle spends a lot of money on homelessness and they haven't solved the problem. So we need to make sure that we are having, our money go to things that are provably going to work. So as far as the budget, we had $15 billion surplus last legislative session, and the majority party spent every dime of it, and they did not give us any tax relief. Instead, they raised taxes. So I really think we need to continue to seek the balance in that area, and we need to make sure that because we were doing well in the last budget with all that federal money, that we make sure that we gave money back to the people. And we need to prioritize things that work, that are evidence-based, and we need to live within our means. Thank you.
Thank you.
Washington State's tax structure is the most regressive in the United States, meaning that Washington families with low incomes pay the highest percentage of their income in state and local taxes, while those with high incomes pay the lowest. What measures would you support to make the tax structure more equitable and less regressive? Cindy Jacobson, please.
Hi, thank you. Again, we've had the majority party in power for almost 40 years. And so if we have a regressive tax system, we can lay that at their doorstep. So I think that as far as addressing regressivity, one thing that we have done and that the whole legislature agreed to do was the working families tax credit, which went to the poorest. We have one of the best financial aid systems in the country, and that is for the poorest of the folks. So I think there's a lot that we can do to address that regressivity. People talk about the B&O tax being regressive. I think we need to be careful there because that's a stable source of revenue. We don't need to get greedy and start raising it all over the place, but we need to be careful of that. As far as an income tax, which could be considered to be less regressive, the voters have voted that down like 10 times. So I think that's a pretty clear message, just like those $30 car tabs. I think when you got a pretty clear message from the voters, you need to be careful of that. And also our state constitution, since income is property, they don't allow us to tax it at differing rates. So I just think our plan of making sure that we return excess monies to the people in the form of tax breaks is going to do the most for working people.
Thank you, Cindy Jacobson. Cameron Severance.
Well, I have to say that not only does Washington State have the most regressive tax code in maybe the United States, but we are the #2 place to do business in the United States. And what we need to do is start balancing those business breaks that we give with project labor agreements to give folks like my buddies and my friends good jobs, which will generate more tax revenue. We also need to look at creative ways to tax Airbnbs, hotels. This is something they do in Vegas, common sense stuff. Tax the tourists. If you want to go on vacation, you can pay an additional tax for it. Works out very well. I'd love to see a gas tax break. I'd love to see the CARES Act repealed. That's another tax, frankly, that we just don't need. Ill-conceived idea. That's something my own party passed, which I am not a fan of. I'll tell you this right now, any way I can to shift tax burden to the wealthy in this state, I will do. Any tax burden that's on working people, I will try to shift away to the wealthy folks. As far as the state income tax goes, I think there's ways we can be creative. There's ways we can be creative without going to a state income tax. Let's be pro-business. Let's be pro-labor. Let's get project labor agreements statewide, get people employed with great jobs. Thanks.
Thank you both.
Next question. Current Washington state law promotes access to affordable, high-quality sexual and reproductive health care, including abortion and contraception, without unnecessary burdens or restrictions on patients or providers. What is your position on these protections, and would you vote to change them or not? And specifically, there's an audience question about where they would stand against, would they stand against a federal abortion ban by Congress or the Supreme Court? Cameron Severance.
Well, let me just say that I support reproductive freedom here in Washington State. As a Christian man, I'll always counsel for life and encourage life, but ultimately that decision shouldn't have government involved between a woman and her doctor. I'm supportive of stopping Catholic hospital systems and other religious hospital systems from absorbing secular ones, which restrict family planning, even all the way down to birth control and contraception. I would oppose a federal abortion ban. The simple facts are this. banning abortion doesn't stop abortions. It harms women. So we should pursue policies that protect women, increase the social safety net, and make it so that everyone has that decision to make for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Jacobson, please.
Hi, thank you. That's a thorny issue. When Roe v. Wade was overturned, what it did was it brought the abortion decision down to the states. So I hope that my federal lawmakers don't pass a nationwide abortion ban, because that's not what Roe v. Wade says is in their purview of authority. That said, I'm pro-life. I vote pro-life, and I'm unapologetic about that. In Washington right now, though, we are facing a lot of issues, and I think this is sort of a distraction, because voters in Washington state voted to legalize abortion, just like they voted for a lot of things, $30 car tabs against income tax. And so that's the law on the books in Washington. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. And that's, although I'm pro-life, that's not what I'm specifically working on right now. And I try not to have a stance on federal issues, to be honest. It's too confusing and too much. I try to just stick to my lane. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next question. What is your position on universal health care for all in Washington state? Cindy Jacobson, please.
I think that we can't afford that at the state level. If we were going to consider it at the national level, that would be the place to do it. I don't think that universal health care is efficient, and I don't think that it's a good idea. I think that I would rather see market-based solutions and charitable-based solutions, and even expansion of the Medicaid reimbursement rates and the Medicare reimbursement rates, which are sadly lacking right now. If we agree to pay for things like Medicaid, then we as the state should pay for the costs of those things, and not say, make it so, and then only fund 50% of the market value of the services. So I think we need to increase our Medicaid and Medicare reimbursement rates up to the market. I think that would go a long way toward making healthcare available for more people. I think that we have got private systems in place that are very generous. And I think that that's the most efficient and effective way to do it. So we don't have to ration healthcare based on who knows what criteria that the government sets up, age, I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy Jacobson. Cameron Severance, please.
Well, I'm a huge proponent of universal health care. My wife had ovarian cancer in 2014. I was making $30,000 a year, and without Obamacare, which is not exactly 100% universal health care, but pretty close, my wife probably would have been dead, because we wouldn't have gone to the doctor, and we would have probably been bankrupt. So I think this idea of let's let charities handle things, like my opponent just said, or let's try to do everything around this issue is a fallacy. I think we're costing ourselves a fortune in healthcare costs by not having equitable access to healthcare for every single person. Look, people are rationing care right now. I have friends and buddies, that they don't go to the doctor because it costs too much darn money. And so what we need once again to get creative with our funding for programs like this. But we need this program. We need universal health care in Washington state. There's a petition going around. It'll be on the ballot next year. I highly recommend folks sign that. This is an opportunity to give every single person health care in Washington state. And we can also get an opportunity to fund that so that we're not putting more pressure on regular folks. Here's the bottom line. We're spending a fortune on healthcare premiums right now. It's going to be cheaper to go to universal health care. Thank you.
Thank you both.
Next question. What is your plan to address substance abuse and mental health issues in your legislative district? Cameron Severance, please. Yeah,
this is an issue that's very near and dear to my heart. our investments right now at the local level are insufficient. We've got inconsistent services. We've got, nonprofit providers that are not providing consistent services. We've got a patchwork system happening to give people help that they need in addiction and also mental health. We've got a 5-year plan right now in Pierce County for homelessness. There's no sense of urgency. There's no sense of urgency right now, in my opinion, from our state government, from our local governments on how serious this issue is. The issue of addiction, people are addicted, losing jobs, and there's just really no way out. There's not enough treatment beds. I'd love to see a massive investment in treatment beds. Medically assisted therapy is something that I think would be really helpful. I think we need to throw the whole kitchen sink at this problem, because this will exacerbate our homelessness issue. This will exacerbate crime issues in our community. And frankly, it's not fair for our law enforcement and folks in law enforcement to be dealing with these issues, on the back end with folks that are addicted. We got to get out in front of this right away. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Jacobson, please.
I agree. It's a huge problem, and it's also a huge problem that's near and dear to my heart. My husband and I, we have 7 kids, one of whom has struggled with drug addiction. And so that colors my thinking every time this issue comes up. I do think we need to make sure we have a reliable system of enough beds and referrals so that when someone does want treatment, that they can get right in. I think one thing that we need to make sure that we do is not let our good intentions get in the way of what's going to work. So since 2018, 17 bills weakening criminal sentencing have been passed by the majority legislature. So these are bills that have weakened criminal sentencing. The Blake decision made us have to insert the word knowingly into our statutes about drugs. So you have to knowingly possess drugs. And what we did last legislative session was, instead of inserting the word knowingly, we turned them all into misdemeanors. And you might think that that's kind, but it's not. Knowing what I know about my son and the various people I've met through this journey, I know that our prosecutors and our police need to be able to arrest people and say, look, it's either jail or rehab. And there's people that have been given that choice, and then they choose rehab, and they're very thankful that they've gotten that choice. So we need to make sure we have enough tools in our toolbox. We do need to make sure we're taking care of the bed space. I think it is a patchwork. I think we do need to take care of that. But I also think that we need to be aware of what our criminal penalties are. Thank you.
Thank you both.
Next question. What state legislation do you propose or support to address climate change and climate-induced disasters? Cindy Jacobson, please.
Yeah, thank you. We've had some huge good intentions with this, and we have had some missteps. So this state of Washington only produces 0.5% of the global emissions. And Washington has spent hundreds of millions of dollars on this and not met their goals. We have a cap and trade law that we passed because California had a similar one, and theirs hasn't worked. So, and it's just going to raise people's heating prices. We don't want to follow California in this. One thing that might work that we really need to work on is good forest management practices. So trees sequester carbon, and in a bad forest fire season, you can have as much carbon emissions as the entire transportation sector for a whole year. So we need to work on our forest management. The low carbon fuel standard that we passed, again, we're emulating California, is going to raise gas taxes 46 cents a gallon. And that's, reasonable sources are using that figure. And this is something that's going to harm people that are working, that are just trying to get to work. Who has to drive a POS car, to work and fill up their tank? It's people who don't have a lot of money. And that's the people that it's going to hit the hardest, is that 46 cents a gallon. So we've done a lot of things that don't make any sense. We need to do the things that are logical with the climate change. And we do need to steward our environment. We need to be good stewards.
Thank you, Cindy Jacobson. Cameron Severance, please.
Well, I think my opponent brought up a great point, which is, people having to drive their cars that are gas guzzlers. What about public transportation? I'm a huge advocate of public transportation, and that is something that we can invest in, but we can't do that without permitting reform. If we've got, multiple localities and jurisdictions asking for thing after thing after thing so we can build, that makes it really challenging to build a comprehensive public transportation system. Look, we're a long way off before we're living in Star Trek, before we got everybody, running around in floating cars that cause zero emissions. So I think we need to throw the whole kitchen sink at it. Nuclear, we got to look at retrofitting our dams to make sure they're the most efficient they can possibly be. We got to look at public transportation, a comprehensive public transportation system. I think that, the idea of being dependent on vehicles forever is something that's just not true. We're going to eventually get to the point where we're going to be able to have a comprehensive public transportation system, but we're Americans. We like our cars, at least I do. So I'm going to continue to drive. But I think the idea that we just have to stay solely focused on driving vehicles is not forward thinking enough. I also believe that we should be looking into hydrogen and any other carbon source that can reduce emissions and be efficient as well.
Thank you, Cameron Severance.
Next question is an audience question, and it concerns whether or not you support police reform and such causes as defunding the police. Cameron Severance.
Yeah, no, I do not support defunding the police. That's got to be one of the worst non-common sense ideas I've ever heard. Look, one of my best friends is a Tacoma PD officer. He's a wonderful man. And, he's got a huge heart for this community. He's got a huge heart for his community. The laws that were passed a couple of years ago, there's some great things in those laws. What we need to fix, though, are the police pursuit laws. Now, what a lot of folks don't know is that the House passed a fix for that police pursuit law last year. The Senate did not take that up. So when I'm elected, that'll be one of my priorities is let's get law enforcement back that ability to pursue folks. But let's keep the good things in place, civilian oversight, banning a chokehold, some other things that were good. They help protect the community, help law enforcement do their job accountably. And so I believe that one of the most important things that we can do right now is let's use our common sense with some of this legislation. We all want to make sure that folks are safe and law enforcement's accountable. But let's recognize law enforcement has a huge heart for this community. It's a tough job. It's one of the toughest jobs out there. And that's why on my website, I'm advocating for lowering the retirement age for our law enforcement and first responders. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Jacobson, please.
Yeah, I too have a heart for our local police. That's why I was endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police and WACOPS and other police organizations. I do think we need adequate training. Of course, we're not going to want to defund the police. We learned that after the Summer of Love. We're not going to want to defund the police. I lost my train of thought. Yeah, no to defunding the police. The one thing that Mr. Severance keeps talking about is how he plans to vote when he gets there. And what I've seen and what I saw during my last two legislative sessions is that there is one party that pretty much all votes as a monolith, and it's not mine. So you think you're going to go down there and vote a certain way, but for some reason in caucus, they all get together and then they come out voting exactly the same way. And they pretty much to a man and woman voted for all these police reforms. So ours is the party that's been standing up against this from the get-go. We do support our police. As a city council person, I always attended their swearing-ins and was privileged to do so. And so, of course, we would never want to defund the police. We want to adequately train them and help them in every way that we possibly can. One way we could maybe help is because we have a de facto requirement that they have body cameras on right now because of the new laws we passed. Maybe we could get some grants to localities for those.
Thank you.
Next question. Since transportation is the biggest single generator of greenhouse gas emissions, what do you propose the legislature should do to reduce those emissions? Please specifically address legislation relevant to East Pierce County. Cindy Jacobson, please.
Well, addressing legislation relevant to East Pierce County, when the Department of Ecology and various staff people worked up the fiscal notes for a lot of this environmental policy, they used worldwide numbers. So in the worldwide numbers, we generate 0.5% of the world's carbon emissions in Washington. So that's the overarching picture. One thing we don't want to do, we don't want to mandate that we all have to buy electric vehicles by 2035, which is what's on the table right now. There's an unelected board that is now telling us that we're going to follow this unelected board in California, and their recommendation is no more electric vehicles purchased, no more non-electric vehicles purchased after 2035. And the reason that I'm kind of worried about that is because right now in California, I think it's 19% of their cars sold are EVs. And Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, is saying things like, gee, we don't know about the adequacy of our electrical grid. We're going to have to ration electricity. And the legislature unanimously passed last time this bill to look at that, the adequacy of our electrical grid. And for some reason, Governor Inslee vetoed it. So we need to be careful about this, and we need to look at the adequacy of our electrical grid before we start making unelected boards give us mandates about not selling any more cars but EV past 2035.
Thank you, Cindy Jacobson. Cameron Severance, please.
Well, outside of the public transportation issue, which I addressed, I believe we need a comprehensive public transportation system statewide. I believe that we can bring jobs close to home. If folks can work close to home, then they're not traveling very far. And one of the things I found really surprising was that my opponent voted against a bill to bring data centers here to Pierce County, which was going to provide up to 3,000 jobs and then over 600 permanent jobs. These are good union jobs tied to project labor agreements. Look, to me, that's common sense stuff. You got to bring jobs here when you get the chance. You got to vote for those bills when you get the chance, because not only does it have a positive effect on our community, it gives my buddies jobs, gives our friends jobs and family jobs, but it also keeps people from having to drive to Seattle, having to drive all over the place. You know, and as far as the electric grid goes, I know that they were checking for brownouts, but that ended up being vetoed by the governor. I disagree with his decision on that. I think we got to get our electrical grid up to snuff before we start pushing everybody over to electric vehicles. And I'll tell you what, when I'm elected, that'll be a big priority of mine, is making sure our electrical grid and our infrastructure is able to support this transition over to an electric vehicle fleet. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron Severance.
Next question, and this will be a 60-second question, timekeeper. How have you demonstrated your commitment to anti-racism? Give specific examples of working with marginalized communities. Cameron Severance, please.
Well, one of the things I did at the beginning of my campaign was to go and speak on behalf of the folks at Meridian Mobile Estates. This is a 95% Hispanic community who is being evicted, even though they're homeowners here in Puyallup. And this is a low-income community. So what I did is I went and I lent my voice and I spoke up on their behalf, along with many others. But this is, just an example of what happens when there's very little foresight on behalf of city council and local governance when it comes to, affordable housing and protecting folks that don't look like me. The bottom line is that this was an easy target. This was an easy purchase for someone. And I was glad and honored to step up and speak up for them. In fact, I still keep in contact with many of them. We came to a positive settlement with the developer so that they can buy new homes and move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Jacobson, please.
Yeah, I too was troubled about the Meridian Estates. That came up when I was on city council and was advocating for them to get bigger settlements all along the way so that they could move on and the developer could move on and put in more affordable housing units, because that's what's going there is apartments and more affordable housing. Anti-racism. I took a lot of seminars about that when I was teaching at community college for 10 years. And, I'm committed to making sure that we have fair and equitable policies around every government function that we have. I mean, that's just a no-brainer. So there you go.
Thank you very much.
Next question. What policies and funding would you support to enhance equity and achievement for students across all school districts? Cindy Jacobson, please go ahead.
That was one of the things when I taught math at Pierce College for 10 years, that we want to make sure that we provide the resources. And I'm not so much in the K through 12, but thinking about what we did at the community college level, we wanted to make sure we provided childcare. We wanted to make sure we provided computers so that people would come in on a level playing field. And we're constantly concerned about that. Just today, talking at Whatcom County Community College about ways that we could potentially get the achievement gap closed in for students of color versus other students, for staying in school, persisting, and even enrolling in certain programs like STEM programs. And we were looking at possible ways like a boot camp at the beginning of before classes start, so that folks could get, a head start on knowing what computer resources to use, particularly people for whom this is their first generation of college student in their family. So, we're always looking at things like that. And I think it's an appropriate part of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy Jacobson. Cameron Severance, please.
Well, my dad's a teacher. I grew up in a WEA household. The WEA had my dad's back when he took on a corrupt superintendent over in the East Valley School District. So I know what teachers go through. I know what teachers have been through in the past few years. And I know that as far as equity goes in our school districts, according to a recent study, we're not meeting our standards. Right now, we have to really start thinking creatively on how to get folks up to speed and get districts where there are marginalized communities up to speed. One of the things I think that we really need to start looking into is statewide bonds, statewide levies, matching bonds and state and levies at the local level, to get the funding that's necessary, because it costs money. Bottom line, common sense stuff. It costs money. And I believe we can have a big partnership with labor. I think the idea of everyone going to college is sort of been pushed out of the way. I think it's wise to start having folks look at the trades. I think we can partner with labor for apprenticeships at our local high schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron Severance.
Next question. The Legislative District 25 has a higher proportion of children than the average in Washington State. Noting that, what is your plan to promote the well-being and opportunities of children in your legislative district? Cameron Severance, please.
Sorry, so promote the well-being and opportunities of children here in LD 25, is that the question?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, well, first of all, I think the legislature is talking about passing free school lunch for every single kid in the district. I think that's a fabulous idea. I was a free lunch kid. My dad was a teacher back then. When I was going through school, we didn't make a lot of money. My mom was a domestic engineer. She stayed home. And so I think that's a fantastic thing. Get kids good nutrition, that'll help them. But as far as broader opportunity, I'm going to tell you something right now. If we can get folks an affordable place to live, a safe community, then we're going to give them the opportunities to succeed, and kids the opportunities to succeed. Our education system should be the best in the country. It's definitely not where it needs to be. We should be seriously looking at major investments in our education system. But you know what? Safe place, affordable place to live, good jobs, and of course, a great education that will always give folks opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Jacobson, please.
Yeah, I think too that safety is a paramount consideration, because if you don't have public safety, you've got very little. As far as kiddos, during the pandemic, we have 7, and I noticed one of my kids was able during the pandemic to enroll her kids in a private school, and she had that privilege. I noticed that we got a letter during the pandemic that if we had a certain amount of money per week, we could put our kids in, it was basically daycare, but they were going to help them with their school. So I would like these opportunities, these kind of opportunities that certain people have because they are more wealthy, to be for everyone. And I think that it would be a great idea, just like financial aid, if people could take part of their education dollars, set some back for handicapped individuals that we're helping, but part of their education dollars and walk with them to appropriate school of their choice. And so I think that would be great for kids.
Thank you very much.
Next question. What is your plan to reduce traffic accidents, speeding, and congestion in your legislative district? Cindy Jacobson, please.
Yeah, I tell you, somebody told me the other day, gee, we don't have to worry about tickets anymore because the police are so understaffed. So we need to make sure that we are fully staffing our police, and some of the institutional things that are causing us to not value our police, and some of our laws that are making them so disheartened and causing the attrition rate and police to move to other states. We need to make sure we take care of all that. So if you have fully staffed police forces and you're paying them well, you can attract good people, and you can have that luxury of writing traffic tickets, which nobody likes, but we want to make sure that we have a safe environment.
Thank you, Cindy Jacobson. Cameron Severance, please.
Yeah, I'm an insurance agent and I see what's happening, the increase in overall claims, which increase costs for everybody's insurance, which is a big bugaboo. I know it's not fun stuff. Overall, I would say that, yeah, safe staffing for police is absolutely essential. I think we got to fix those police pursuit laws. But more importantly, what about jobs close to home so folks don't have to drive? You know, if you can have a job that's 5 minutes away, then you're not driving as much. I think traffic fatalities and traffic accidents are a great example of bad planning for the future. I think we can, bring jobs close to home, which once again, my opponent did vote against. So folks aren't driving as far. The longer you are on the road, the more likely you are to get into a car accident. The law of averages just eventually catches up with you. But I'd like to see us really invest in jobs close to home. Folks can, work close to where they are so they're not driving as much. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron Severance.
Next question will be 60 seconds, timekeeper. 60 seconds. How will you work across the aisle to achieve bipartisan legislation? Cameron Severance.
Well, we've been talking about it all night. We got to fine tune those police pursuit laws. I know that the House did pass that, so there's plenty of support on the Democratic side. I know there's plenty of support on the Republican side for that. I'm going to go ahead and work with whoever wants to get that done, get some fine tuning done, get law enforcement back to where they can do their jobs effectively. I've got friends of all different political affiliations supporting me. So, some of them are doorbelling for me. All I know is this: I haven't lost a single friend through Donald Trump's elections, pandemic, or anything else. And the reason why is because I treat people with respect. I understand that we all have different strokes for different folks. And frankly, common sense people recognize common sense people. So you got a different opinion than me. That's okay. We can a singular focus, which is to make our communities stronger, to make our communities healthier. And I'll work with anybody on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Jacobson, 60 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. I have a record of working in a bipartisan manner. I've gotten 3 bills passed, and you don't get it passed if you're in the minority, if you're not working in a bipartisan manner. On the city council, I was in the minority and we got some stuff done, and we had a lot of 7-0 votes because we had talked to each other and worked together. So I'm looking forward to working together in the legislature in person so that we can go ahead and make those friendships and associations that help us to work together on things. And I'm particularly excited to never, ever, ever have a legislative session on Zoom again. I just don't think that was effective for the people or for the legislators. I want to address that data center bill. There were several of those floating around, and I sponsored one. So there was a lot of various data center bills with various components to them. And I did sponsor one, and I do believe in jobs close to home. And the way that we're going to do that is make sure that we're stopping with the excessive taxes, making sure that we're stopping with the environmental laws that are raising diesel prices over 50 cents a gallon. That's going to cause prices to go up.
Thank you.
Next question. Given that your legislative district has a low vacancy rate, 4% compared to the state average of 8%, What legislation do you propose to ensure affordable housing is available in your legislative district? Cindy Jacobson, please.
Well, I tell you what I don't want to do. I don't want to pass the Clean Buildings Act that when Central gave us their capital requests, 2 of their top 4 capital requests were to tear down buildings that didn't comply with the Clean Buildings Act. I don't want to outlaw natural gas. I don't want to do any of those things. I forget the question now. I'm sorry. What will I do to?
What legislation do you propose to ensure affordable housing is available in your legislative district?
Sure. Basically, let's not get in the way of people that provide housing. One thing that I don't definitely want to do is put in any sort of rent controls, which I have seen my opponent advocate for, because what that's going to do is that is going to make a shortage of the supply of housing. So I don't want to do those things. We do have some plans in place where we've got multifamily tax exemptions that we've got in place, which are reasonable to provide multifamily tax exemptions. We want to incentivize affordable housing as much as we can. So those are things that I would look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy Jacobson. Cameron Severance, please.
Well, I think part of the issue here is that we're spending so much of our time pulling people out of the river that we're not trying to figure out where they're falling in. Look, I don't believe in rent control. I believe in a rent freeze for seniors. Just to clarify, we're talking about tripling of senior homelessness. That's my grandmother, and I can't have her on the street. We got to find a creative way to protect our seniors, and that's something that's really important to me. As far as affordable housing goes, we need permitting reform, 100%. We have to make sure that we can do multifamily building at the local level as fast as possible. And to do that, we need permitting reform, we need zoning reform. And so I will advocate for both of those things, because at this point, we've also have Wall Street hedge funds like BlackRock, Invitation Homes, American Homes for Rent that are purchasing 20% of our homes, single family homes here in Washington. We got to get them out of our market. Whatever we got to do, disincentivize, however we got to do that. And also, I'm a landlord. I just purchased a rental in Spokane. I don't want everyone to have rent control. What I'm talking about is common sense stuff to make sure seniors don't have to go out on the street, because frankly, I don't think my grandma would make it. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron Severance.
Next question is an audience question, and it will be 60 seconds, timekeeper. What will you do to protect the rights of homeowners who live in mobile home parks so that they are able to purchase the land instead of being sold to developers so they can build expensive housing? Cameron Severance, please.
Well, I can tell you what the folks at Meridian Mobile Estates have told me, and after texting with a few of them, the legislative changes that need to happen, we need to make sure there's right of first refusal. But I believe that manufactured home parks are some of the most affordable places in our state. So I believe that they should be off limits to development, at least until we can get to the point where we have enough affordable housing. Bottom line is there's just not enough housing inventory. It doesn't make sense to take 43 families out so you can get 20 affordable apartments and the rest of them at $3,000 a month. That's what was happening in Puyallup. There wasn't even nearly as many affordable units there as people were already living there. But I believe that we need to give right of first refusal to the folks who live in the manufactured home communities. And I believe that they should be off limits. And I'll fight like a tiger to make sure that other folks who live in manufactured home communities don't get their homes sold out from under them, and then they find themselves like the folks at Meridian Mobile Estates. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Jacobson, please.
Yeah, mobile homes are affordable housing. Senator Castema, who has endorsed me, by the way, our former Democratic State Senator Castema, put in place quite a while ago some legislation that gives folks, when they are displaced, they have certain notice requirements. I think it was 2 years during COVID. They have notice requirements. They can be cashed out. They can get help moving their manufactured homes. Some of the ones in Meridian Mobile Estates had been, the land is owned underneath them by an entity, and they had been modified so they were unmovable. And as Mr. Severance said, City of Puyallup stepped up and gave them some cash. That's just unprecedented, but that's fine. They did that. The developer helped them. They did get the help that they needed, as Mr. Severance stated. So I think we're okay here. I think we have systems in place.
Thank you very much.
This question is from the audience. What will each candidate do to protect people from hate speech? What is your position on freedom of speech? And what, if any, limits would you place on freedom of speech? Cindy Jacobson, please.
I don't know if this is referring to something, somebody modified my Wikipedia the other day to refer to, there was a statue in Puyallup that was on top of someone's house, and it was egregious. It was terrible. And people were asking that we form a racial equity commission, and they were asking that we on the Puyallup City Council, get the police chief to take down that statue. Well, here's the thing. I don't believe in limits on free speech. I think that that racist statue, although it was terrible, the guy had a right to put it there. And what was nice about what happened with that racist statue is the neighbors got him to take it down. And so that's the way I think it should happen. We can't just have protected speech be the speech that we like. We have to be able to have a discourse and be able to have ideas heard that are not our ideas. And that's what we're doing here tonight. And that's what's reasonable and good. And so I think free speech is free speech. Thanks.
Thank you, Cindy Jacobson. Cameron Severance, please.
Yeah, if that was referring to that incident, then, frankly, I think that was a big drop ball by the part of the city council, right in the middle of the biggest racial justice movement since the civil rights movement. It's an opportunity for the city to show good faith. It's an opportunity for leaders to say, you know what, we understand, we might understand your exact experience, but we're not going to allow this type of thing in our community. There's code ordinances, there's all kinds of stuff people in power can do to make sure statues like that go away. That is a concerted effort by leadership to say, well, we can't really do anything. Sorry about that. So let me just tell you right now, you got to be creative, got to use your common sense. If the neighbors helped him take it down, that's fantastic. But I think going forward, there are still issues to address when it comes to this community. I think folks that don't look like me need to have a voice at the table. And I hope to be an honest broker for that. I hope to be a facilitator. I don't believe in being adversaries with anyone. I think folks can sit down and talk to each other. I think we can work a lot of things out. Hate speech is in some forms is not protected speech, just FYI, but I am pro free speech, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron Severance.
Thank you very much, candidates. Now it's time for our closing statements. I'm sorry we didn't get to all the audience questions, but we got to most of them. Each candidate has up to 1 minute for their closing statement. We will change the order of the opening statement. So we'll start with Cameron Severance. Your statement, please.
Well, I just have to say that this opportunity to run for office has been incredible. I'm having a blast. I'm meeting lots of folks, but this is also really serious stuff. There's a lot of real issues that frankly aren't being addressed by our current representation. Folks want a common sense person to represent them. They want a working person to represent them. And as the old saying goes, it's people versus money. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm the candidate that will always choose people. So I hope you go to my website, CameronSeverance.com. Feel free to reach out to me. That's goes to my own email. I'll respond back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cindy Jacobson.
Yeah, it's been my privilege to serve in the legislature these last 2 years and on the Puyallup City Council before that. And I just want to make sure we do have common sense in our government. And people are really concerned about affordability right now. And I want to really work on those issues and make sure that we don't have our gas prices going up 46 cents a gallon to even $1 a gallon when you add in the effects of the cap and trade policy that I didn't even get to talk about. I'm reminded of the old Beatles song, I'll tax the street, I'll tax your seat, I'll tax your heat, I'll tax your feet. Well, they were more prescient than they realized, because that's what we're doing right now. We had a $15 billion surplus and we spent it and even raised more taxes. And when we're in the legislature, we have to make priority decisions about what policies are good, what policies are not a good idea and well-intentioned, but not a good idea. And we have to choose among the good policies and make sure we prioritize, but we also have to prioritize our families and our affordability for people. Thank you. Cindy Jacobson.
Thank you very much. Thank you both very much.
Thanks.
I apologize. In ballot order, the candidates for Legislative District 25, House Position 2 are Cindy Jacobson and Cameron Severance. Your ballot will be mailed out October 21st. Be sure to vote early and no later than November 8th. We would like to thank the candidates who participated, the timekeeper, Susan Eidenshank, Tacoma-Pierce County League of Women Voters, and our community sponsors, the Affordable Housing Consortium, Asia Pacific Cultural Center, Grit City Co-op, Latinx Unidos of South Sound, NAACP of Tacoma, Sumner Waller Community Association, the Tacoma Urban League, Vibrant Schools, and the YWCA of Pierce County.
You can see other League of Women Voter candidate forums at lwvtpc.org. Please read your voters pamphlet, look at vote411.org, where you can find answers to questions posed to all candidates running for office. Read the candidates' websites and do all that you can to be an educated voter. And please do not forget to vote before November 8th. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your being here. Good night.